Hey guys, welcome to another unit unboxing video for Age of Wonders Planetfall. Today the unit we're looking at is the Vanguard PUG. The Vanguard PUG is a Tier 2 mechanical specialist support unit. The model kind of resembles a dog, man's best friend. I like dogs in real life. I also like this unit in this game. It has a very specific purpose, and when used effectively, it provides a ton of value to your combat force. Because it's Tier 2, you will need a specialist training center to build it, but it's still pretty economical to have in your army as far as building and upkeep. Let's take a look. So they have 3 support abilities that are all used in the tactical map, and they're all very useful. I've noticed using this unit quite a bit over the last couple of days. Almost every battle that this unit's in, you'll end up using at least 2 of the 3 tactical support skills, and combined with the passive support ability that factors into the strategic layer, it's just a super valuable unit to have in bio and infantry detachments as part of your armies. So let's look at the skills a little more closely here. As we've looked at a couple other ones, it's a mechanical unit, so it takes reduced damage from psionic channel but a little bit more damage from the arc channel. It's mindless, meaning it's immune to morale effects and some of the other psionic effects in the game. As I mentioned earlier, it's a specialist unit, so you have to have that specialist training center in order to build it. It's still a light unit though, so it is vulnerable to some of the stagger and knockback effects that other units can apply to it, so that's something to be aware of. Its first skill, let's look at the passive skill at the strategic one I mentioned earlier, the biological recovery. So the way this works is any biological unit in the army that the PUG is in is going to heal 6 health per turn at their strategic layer, which is really good. I've always enjoyed this ability, like I alluded to earlier in the Age of Wonders series. I think it's super valuable. Again, in the right kind of army, it's just you're going to get a ton of value just from that one passive alone. Getting into the tactical skills that the unit has, the blast laser, it's 16 damage on the thermal channel, it's 5 range, single action, and it's affected by line of sight. So obviously for a support unit, you're not going to have tons of opportunities to be dealing damage with this unit. It's not really its role. It's not really why you're going to have it as part of your army. But the good news is, if the opportunity presents itself, 16 damage isn't really that small of an amount. So it is just one shot, but it can do some damage. Overall, though, I'd say it's a weak skill, which is fine. The Blur Cloud, on the other hand, this is its first support skill. Its target unit becomes 40% harder to hit for 2 turns. It's range 3, single action. It's on a 2-turn cooldown. So this I've always used primarily as a combat initiation ability. So I preemptively will blur a unit, and with that, you generally a more sturdy or tanky unit, and I'll safely advance it into what would otherwise might be kind of a dangerous position, and then the AI or other players in multiplayer have to decide, okay, do they want to try to take shots at this unit, which is going to be harder to hit, or are they just going to try to ignore it? So it's a really valuable skill. 40% harder to hit is a lot. The only things to keep in mind with this skill, you need to be relatively close to the target unit to use it. But it does combine well with some of the other skills we'll get into next. So Healing Charge is a wonderful ability, especially early game. It's really strong. So heal a unit for 25 health. Now notice it doesn't have to be any specific type of unit. It doesn't have to be biological, even though that's how the passive works. This is basically just heal any unit for 25 health. It's range 3. You can only use it once per battle. It's really strong. And essentially, using this ability, if you have a PUG in your army, you should be able to keep at least any one unit alive, no matter how dangerous of a situation you get in, unless you really make a mistake. But as I mentioned earlier, with Blur Cloud, where you've already, you've blurred a unit, you've sent it into the enemy force, maybe a turn or 2 after you've done that, it's been taking some damage, not a ton of damage, but some damage as part of, being in your advanced position, that's where you come in and use the healing charge on it. So, you know, again, the main thing is to understand where you're going to position your PUG unit so that it has enough range to be able to apply the either the blur or the heal onto the unit that you're going to use to do this with. And then lastly, the last support skill that it's got is the resupply charge, and this is situationally a really impressive skill. So what it'll do is all of a target's units and abilities, or unit abilities and cooldowns, are reset. It's range 3, single action, and again, like the healing charge, you can only use it once per battle. Generally, this is something that I've been using with some of the more devastating like commander and hero units and abilities. That cooldown and ability reset is just really strong. You'll see as you progress throughout the game, you know, this unit's very useful early on, and because of this resupply charge, I found that this unit's pretty useful even into late game as well, where you've got some of the stronger units and skills unlocked, and the only way the game's trying to balance them is by having, you know, a longer cooldown or one-time usage on those abilities. But your PUG is basically your easy workaround for that. So that stays valuable throughout the game. As far as progression for the unit, it's tier 2, so it's going to get 6 health at each level. It gets a little accuracy mixed in, and also at the prime level, its passive skill is firm, which just gives it stagger resistance. So basically, kind of mixed review here. I'd say the health is nice to have because your PUG is oftentimes going to be in a position where it's going to take some damage throughout the round. And firm, you know, being stagger resistant is always great. But the accuracy stuff, you know, you're hardly ever going to be using the blast laser to begin with, so it's kind of a mixed bag, I would say. Now, the main reason why you want to keep this unit alive isn't necessarily to preserve any one unit, but it's more a matter of getting the most value out of that passive ability from turn to turn, and preserving some of your other more valuable units. So definitely, you know, your support units, you want to keep them alive as much as possible. To kind of bring it full circle for tactical considerations here, I think, in my opinion, this is a super valuable unit that needs to be in almost any army detachment you have. Even some of the more late game, higher tiered heroes and higher leveled units, it's just always valuable. Specifically, if you're building an army with the notion around using primarily infantry or bio units, you know, choosing corresponding commander skills to go with that and kitting them up appropriately, it just makes the PUG even more valuable. One last thing I'll mention, just because I've done this, you know, I like to do this a lot with a lot of my units, but that biological heal is easily shared between multiple armies who are already fighting nearby each other. So you can swap it in and out of whichever army needs more of a heal from that passive. And it's just a ton of benefit. So that's pretty much the review. I think it's a great unit. I like the model. I think it's pretty easy to use. There can be some sticky situations just based on the ranges, like I mentioned earlier, where you need to kind of understand the order of operations of how you're going to use, how and when to use your blur and heal abilities primarily to get the most out of those. But other than that, once you get used to using this unit, I think you'll find that it's just really strong and needs to be in just about every Vanguard army. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think below. Thanks for watching.